Welcome to the Mick, a Mook, and a Mike.
Hosted by four-time Emmy-nominated producer
Frank Mace and retired New York City firefighter, 9/11 first responder, and Vietnam vet, Billy O'Connor.
Today's guest,
award-winning actress, Wendie Malick.
My brother
Frankie, how you doing today, brother? How's everything?
Good. Our guest today is Wendie Malick, star of Shrinking, Night Court, Chicken Fingers,
Everything and anything. No, she's been in a lot of stuff.
Everything. She's been on television more than
Hot in Cleveland.
Hot in Cleveland.
Young Sheldon.
It's incredible. But we'll get to Wendie in a few minutes. Are you in mourning? Oh wait. Let me. Before I ask you that, I just want to announce that our book has hit the New York Times bestseller list. Can you believe that?
Is that right?
Bestseller list. And our podcast is now one of the 5 top podcasts in the United States. What do you think of that?
I think it's amazing. Tell me, which one of our books has reached the New York Times bestselling list?
Well, we've got the number 1, the number 4, the number 5, and the number 9 books on the New York Times bestseller list. And if you believe that, Donald Trump will be voted president of the United States.
I'm starting to see a glimmer of hope.
That was some surprising election, hasn't it?
Yeah,
I mean, it was surprising to us, but not we shouldn't have been surprised in retrospect.
Well, if you were to put a gun to my head and said that it's going to be a landslide,
It's Wendie Malick.
I would have went.
Star of Shrinking,
I never thought
Night Court, Chicken Fingers.
I thought it was going to be close enough. Everything and anything.
If
you had to say it was going to be a landslide,
she's been on
I would have bet
television
my
more
dollar.
than. See, I would have been the other way. I would have
Sheldon?
thought. I said that if Trump wins, he'll win on election night, and if Harris wins, we might not know the answer yet as to how she won. Derek, what do you think?
I knew it was going to be a landslide, and I knew he was going to win, and
you were right.
Yeah, and I don't know if you guys recall, my sentiment for the last probably 2 years has been that it's possible that America's gonna vote in that direction. And
you have been saying that for 2 years.
Yeah.
No, that's very consistent. You're not. This is not a revisionist history by any stretch of the imagination. You've been saying that, and I tell you the truth. I thought you were out of your mind. I didn't think it was going to happen.
Yeah. And why do you think that is? Why do you think you thought?
Why do I think it happened?
No. Why do you think that you thought that and I didn't?
Well, again, it's the media that I listen to. You know what I mean? I listen to affirmation journalism. I want to believe a certain thing.
Right.
And then I feed that information into my system.
Yeah.
That's true with social media. It's true with what news stations I watch.
Yeah.
And frankly, I thought that that just sheer lying. If you just lie continually, that
are you saying our books didn't make the bestseller list?
Hate to break it to you.
Yeah, you wouldn't think that. I mean, I just thought America wouldn't just
smarter than that.
Yeah,
smarter than that.
Yeah. And then I caught myself thinking that smarter than that, more sophisticated than that. And then I caught myself and saying, no, we're not. We're not even in need of.
The Democrats are not the smartest party, as we know, and the fact that a close friend of mine said, "Why were they lying about Biden?" I mean, they were covering for Nancy Pelosi's one of the biggest, most guilty people of them all.
Richest.
Yeah, well, that's another conversation. But she was covering for Biden for years. And now she says, well, Joe Biden should not announce he was going to be a one-term president. Then we could have had a real primary and a real candidate. That pisses me off because it's her fault in the first place.
You think if they had an open convention, then somebody like Shapiro or something could have won and went on to. I don't think anybody was going to beat him.
Yes, but
in retrospect, looking back, I mean, I don't know what he could have done. But I mean, he ran the worst campaign I've ever seen in the last month, especially.
Correct.
I mean, it was absolutely the worst campaign.
If you believe what you see on television.
Yeah,
but I mean,
exactly.
But tell me, you go into Detroit, and you never heard of the Detroit Lions football team. You go into Detroit and you call Detroit a shithole.
Yeah, but
You go into Pittsburgh and say it's a shithole.
Yeah, but those things. Listen, they're in, and no offense to Pittsburgh, but there are people in Pittsburgh that think Pittsburgh's a shithole.
There are people in Los Angeles that think Los Angeles is a shithole.
Yeah, exactly. So the point is that, like, the difference now is that people are not, so they're not masking their true feelings as they were in the past. And so, a lot of times we're talking about like cordial conversation, or having the kind of communication that's civil, right?
Yeah, right.
And I believe in civil conversation, but I also feel like people are tired of being, and I'm speaking about the country and myself too. Like, I'm tired of the corruption, and I'm tired of being lied to, and I would much rather.
But there's been corruption, and you've been lied to all your life.
No, I understand that, but the difference is, here's what I think people, particularly people that just watch their mainstream media, don't realize, is that there was a huge shift in the country in 2020 in terms of how people acquire their information, and where they sourced the direction that they should be thinking from, and that direction was podcasting. And if you remember, we started this podcast right before that, right? And we were sort of on the tail end, truthfully, in terms of like the wave of that genre. And so the Democratic Party, most of the politicians did not understand that. And because they didn't understand that, people like myself and probably the majority of America started to get their information from other places. And because of that, when you're in an echo chamber and you don't look at all, like, you don't get your information from a bunch of different sources, you are locked out of the truth. That's just a fact.
Yeah, but you said that people are tired of being lied to. They're tired of corruption. So they voted for Donald Trump?
When you talk about being lied to, have you ever looked at the world map?
Of course.
Okay. Do you know that the world map, the ratios, the size of the continents are not accurate?
Of course.
Okay. How many people you think know that?
I don't know, but Europe is not anywhere near the size it is in the United States.
And when did you figure this out?
Oh, not too long ago, really, about 8-9 years ago. Yeah. Okay.
So, and I would bet you 70% of the country has no idea.
95% of the country has no idea.
Okay. So that little thing right there,
it's very valid,
has a huge psychological sort of bearing on the way people think about the world. And that you don't have any mainstream media talking about that at all. It's very, you know what I mean?
No, that's true.
It's extremely important. Another thing, what about the Catholic Church?
What do I think about the Catholic Church personally?
Like I
think they're a bunch of medieval ass rapists. Okay. That's what I think about the Catholic Church.
And how often in your lifetime have you heard the mainstream media really talk about it from the perspective of, this is an organization that we need to do something about?
Never.
Okay, so those are just two like really significant.
But I wouldn't say the Catholic Church specifically. The Catholic Church is, listen to me, I have no affinity for the Catholic Church for a number of reasons, especially being Irish. The Catholic Church is one of the worst things that ever happened to Ireland. Oppressive.
Okay. Perfect subject then.
Super oppressive. But I don't think, there's a number of churches that I think have a bad influence.
That doesn't matter. This is the most powerful church. This is the most powerful church.
Is it the most powerful
Absolutely.
church?
100%. 100%.
Probably most powerful, maybe not the most populous, but the most powerful.
Yeah. 100% the most powerful. And I feel like as a citizen of the United States, I feel like it's a requirement that the mainstream media make people aware of these things. And if they don't, then I don't trust them. But if you listen to alternative media, they're going to talk about these things.
Well, you know who advised Donald Trump on what podcast he should go on?
Who?
Joe Rogan, right?
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah. Who?
Barron Trump.
Barron, really? I didn't know. Really?
Yep. He advised his father as to what podcast he should go on.
And let me ask you guys a question. Did you watch that podcast?
No, I didn't.
Why?
I watched.
I didn't have 3
excerpts.
hours.
I watched
You have
excerpts.
3 hours.
I don't want to hear a guy lie for 3 hours. That's one reason.
You
Every time he opens his mouth, it's a lie.
listen. Almost every time they open their mouths on the media that you listen to, at least 80% of it is
Well, show business. We know it's show business.
Yeah, I know that. I mean, of course, it's show business. But when a man wants to run for president of the United States and refuses to be fact-checked, I will go on a debate, but I can't be fact-checked. I will go here, but I can't be fact-checked. Why do I want to listen to a man like that? In other words, he's not going to say, he'll say whatever he wants, and I don't know what he's saying is true or not true.
Oh, by the way,
All politicians are liars, but when you're that much of a liar, when you say, I'm not going to get fact-checked, you're ganging up on me.
By the way, our audio book also hit the top
10. Why don't we just go right to number one? Why are we bullshitting around with this top 10 stuff? Number one, our audio book.
So
yeah,
anyway, at the end of the day, I just feel like the fact that I have a really good friend. He's your age, and he's like certified genius, and he's got
like us.
Yes, and he's a pilot. He's got 26 patents. Like he's a formidable person for the country.
He's a Renaissance man,
and he feels like you guys do about Trump and about the country and the political system. And I said to him, "Did you watch the podcast and a podcast for Joe Rogan?" He was like, "No." And I said, "Okay, I'm going to send you the link and you watch the podcast." And he watched the podcast and he came out of the situation. He wasn't a fan, and it didn't change his mind, but it did change his perspective.
In what way?
Because he was able to. He was shocked at the ability of a sitting president. I'm sorry, a president sitting in a room to be able to sort of captivate someone's attention for that long, and also be able to be able to communicate like a normal person for 3 hours. And that's the difference. The difference is what you're watching typically with a president on regular mainstream media. They're segments and they're sound bites, and you never get like a full point. And I don't think that is the best way to learn about a system or a situation or a person.
Well, that's good. That's a good perspective. That's a good perspective. And let's close this just by saying that now, I'm not going to watch CNN. No, I'm serious. I'm not going to watch CNN for my news, and I'm not going to watch MSNBC for my news, because all they're going to do is talk about the past.
Yeah.
So when I watch cable news, I'm going to watch a little bit more of Fox than I ever had before, because I'm not going to watch that asshole Gutfield or whatever the hell that fucking asshole's name is. But I'll watch to get a perspective on what's going to happen in the future, because the future is more important than the past.
Have any of you guys ever Googled or been curious about what is actually the most factual news station of the bunch of them that are giving news?
I actually have. I don't remember the statistics, but I feel like they all were pretty close in terms of like.
Well, I mean, they weren't too far apart, but the most accurate of all was CNN, oddly enough. Not MSNBC, is slanted big time left, and of course Fox is slanted big time right.
Where'd you get this polling? Was this the same polls that polled for the election?
I just went to Google.
I
didn't do any extensive research on this. I just punched into Google who's the most accurate.
Oh, okay. Well, then
and they gave me percentages.
My friend Nick watches the international news to find out what's going on in the country.
Yeah.
To find out what's going on in the States.
Like BBC, like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a good idea. I think BBC is fairly accurate, but again, you know what? In journalism, there's a dilemma for every journalist, and is whether he speaks or writes what he thinks is true, or he writes or speaks what his boss tells him to do. And if you want to have a platform, you have to write or talk about what your boss tells you to talk about.
Okay.
Because he owns the station.
Yeah.
And you won't have a platform if you don't do as you're told.
Yeah.
And it's called a journalist dilemma. It's been going on since journalism started.
Yeah, and that's a problem.
Well, I know one problem.
Oh boy, he's just trying to segue out of this.
We're running late.
We're running late.
And we have a guest.
And we got a great guest on.
Late. We could go for another 20 minutes. Okay.
We have a great guest.
We have a great guest coming. So, Derek, can you get America's favorite actress, Wendie Malick?
Wendie Malick.
You ready to start?
I'm ready, Frank.
Let me get you off the phone. You don't need to be on the phone anymore.
yeah.
So I guess I have a delay there. We have a delay between the video and me. So I just won't pay attention.
There's going to be a slight delay, yeah.
Okay.
But you look fantastic this morning.
You certainly do.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I rode hard and put away wet. But
Oh,
That's a small fault in a good woman. A very small fault in a good woman.
well, I guess we've started, haven't we, Derek?
Yes, we have.
you were there, Phil. You know what happened last night.
Yes,
It's been a while.
I do indeed. Well, we have the busiest woman in show business on our podcast today, Wendie Malick. Thank you for joining us. My opening question is, what's it like to kiss Harrison Ford?
Not bad.
Nice work if you can get it.
No, somebody's got to do it. He's just delightful to work with. He's generous and funny and self-effacing. And the first day actually the second day I worked with him, we had to make out when I'm just wearing his shirt. So we really get to know each other quickly in this business. And it's helpful if it's someone with a great sense of humor, and he is very droll and very funny and just so lovely. So yeah, that's been great fun.
How'd you get the role?
I had worked for Bill Lawrence on a short-lived series that was based on Rush Hour, called Rush Hour, based on the film. And I was the police captain, and I hated the whole gun stuff. I'm not a big gun person at all. And when I had to chase bad guys, I looked kind of like a deer. Stay low and like how to get around a corner, and it was not my favorite role, but I like Bill so much, and he's a genius, and he threw me a bone. He said, I think I owe you one, so you're going to come and be Harrison Ford's neurologist, and you have great chemistry. And of course, as you guys know, that doesn't always work out.
Right.
So when you've never met someone and you're told that you're going to have this amazing chemistry, you just hope and pray they have a good hunch that it's going to work, and in this case it did.
And Shrinking is now in its second season, and I believe it's been picked up for a third season.
Nice.
Yep.
Wow.
Terrific.
Wow.
The funny thing is, it shoots literally in the studio right next
to
door.
us. Yep.
I don't go very far these days. I was in Young Sheldon last year, and those 3 studios are in a little triangle at Warner Brothers.
Well, that's when you get back from Chicken Sisters or whatever the name of that Hallmark show is that you're shooting in Canada, right?
Yeah, that was in Vancouver.
Wow.
Yeah, it's been quite a year.
I'll say.
This is when you're supposed to, as an actress, go and hide under a rock and call it a day. But for me, I'm a very late bloomer, so I guess this is my time.
Wait. A late bloomer?
I don't know about that. Not for the research I've done, anyway.
I mean, 119 episodes of Brian Benben show, 128 Hot in Cleveland's. I think that your bloom you've been bloomed for quite a while.
But I never really started. I mean, I sort of hit pay dirt when I got the role on Dream On, and it was the first time people realized I was a good comedian, and that opened so many doors for me. But I was 40 when I started that show, so I didn't start as a young. I didn't become a successful actress until I was late 30s, 40s.
Well, you survived long enough to catch a break.
Yeah.
Yeah. I come from good genes. They last a long time. So
I guess so.
So do I. They're Jordache, I think. But when you started, the comedy was your breakthrough. So you really started it as like a dramatic actress. I read that your dream role would be Lady Macbeth. So
possibly. I'm not. I think people who are really excellent at doing the Bard, I have so much admiration for them. It's not really my wheelhouse. So at one point I was thinking that would be an interesting thing to tackle, but I'm not sure anymore. I think I'd rather do Martha and Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, even though I'm really too old for it, but I can pass.
Yes, you can. So you started off as a Wilhelmina model or a fashion model?
No. I after college, I went to Washington and worked for Jack Kemp, who was my congressman, and we were friends with their family. We used to ski together, and he said, when you get out of college, if you want to come to Washington and see what it's like, let me know. And I went and was an intern for him for 4 months. It was during Watergate. Fascinating time to be there.
Wow.
Wow.
He was a good guy. He was a moderate Republican. I was wearing a McGovern button. But things were wild, kind of like now. But the difference was on weekends, everyone stayed in Washington, and they didn't go home every weekend to fundraise. They actually went to dinner together, and these lovely hostesses in Washington really provided like an atmosphere where they could come together and collaborate and say, I'll help you with your bill, you help me with mine. It wasn't considered a travesty to be friends with people on the other side of the aisle. And unfortunately, that's changed so much.
Wow.
And your Buffalo roots go back to Jack Kemp. That's how you know Jack Kemp. He was a quarterback for the Buffalo Bills. In the early 60s. My friend Stu Barber played for Buffalo Bills in the early 60s, was a good friend of Congressman Kemp, who ran for vice president. And it's
it seemed like a simpler time in politics, if that's hard to believe. I mean, it's just the hate. We were talking about that before, that it's just so divisive that it's beyond belief.
The language has just changed so much, the civility part of it. But the underpinnings of that, I think someone sent me a very wise column. It was an excerpt from Peggy Noonan's new book, and she was a speechwriter for Bush and for, I think, Reagan before that. She's a very interesting woman and a wonderful writer, and I remember seeing her on panels, and she always seemed very reasonable to me. But she was sort of talking about the idea and the promise of America, and that we've always been a violent country, and we are an experiment that will, never be completed, but it's the aspirational part of it, and that we've sort of been in this situation before, and it's helpful to sort of step back and see that the pendulum is going like this, and there needs to be some corrections, and you just hope that it's strong enough to survive whatever we got ahead of us.
Yeah, my biggest concern, I mean, it's just so many concerns I have about it, but the idea of the Constitution, it's the document. Everything's about that document. To think that we can even fool with that document is so pretentious, ridiculous. That's so that bothers me. Just tear up the Constitution, fooling around with the Constitution.
People were so anxious this week that, and Phil, you may know who was behind this, but we actually had therapy dogs on the lot yesterday. During lunch, the cast provided a hamburger truck for everybody, and then inside stage 12, they had 9 therapy dogs, so that everyone on the crew and the cast and the staff could go in and just lie on the floor and hug a dog for a while.
Yeah,
because we were all suffering from, sort of PTSD, but also we were doing this musical this week, so it was quite a frenetic, crazy week. I was so grateful to be thrown into this thing because it was just a big departure.
When Pixie called me, Pixie Westbars is the producer, and she said, I want to bring therapy dogs on the set. Me being an old producer, being a 35-year, 40-year producer, saying,
I already know where this is going.
What the fuck? Are you crazy? A therapy dog? Can you imagine if in 1980, 1986, 1990, I went to anybody and said, a therapy dog? Are you crazy? But
I think everybody should have therapy dogs come to their office every week. I think we'd be a much kinder, gentler nation.
Well,
after that election, there's so many people jumping out of windows, out of skyscrapers. They're just picking a number like a bakery. I mean, it's am I up next? Who's next?
Wait, I got a question. So, Frank, did you participate? Did you
yeah,
any?
But
get a good-looking one, Frank. Did you pick out a good-looking one?
Because of the nature of show business today, I spent an hour on the phone with the corporate legal people, human relations, just so I could okay it.
Wow,
It's crazy.
That's crazy.
Makes you want to hug a dog, don't it, Frank?
No, doesn't make me want to hug a dog at all. It makes me want to shoot some HR people.
Did it help, Wendy? Is what
That's
I want
for
to know,
sure.
because I will try it if it helps.
So we're premiering Night Court, and now you're a regular on Night Court. What is it like working with Melissa Rouse and a veritable veteran, a peer, John LaRoquette, amongst others?
I so appreciate these guys. Well, I have to say, first of all, Melissa is such an excellent number one on the call sheet, because that usually does determine the vibe of like the set.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I've ever met a more generous and lovely lead in a series. She is. She just has this nurturing quality where she cares so much about everybody there, seems to know all about what's going on in your life, always wants to know more. And she's such a pro, and she's a mother. And I just am sort of in awe of how she balances all these things. She's juggling a lot, and she does it with such grace and such lovely energy. And John is just John. I mean, he's such a character, such a curmudgeon, but the one that I can usually get him to laugh.
There's the first snort. By the way, we'll measure the success of this podcast by the amount of times Wendie snorts. So there was the first one.
Tell us a story, Billy.
That's the story, Billy. Well, that's some segue. He segues like you do.
Yeah, but John is a terrific guy. He's got the reputation of being a curmudgeon, but he is anything but a curmudgeon to those of us who know him and love him. I think that's sort of a protective shield he puts up, not to let any people get near him.
I think you called him the master of understatement at one time.
Yeah.
If I'm quoting you correctly, and I hope I am.
So
when they do take those moments, we had one last night at the end of the show where he's sitting with Melissa's character, and they just go to that real moment of his deep affection for her, and those things really become that much more meaningful when you realize how seldom he reveals that part of himself. And I think that's what gives these crazy zany sitcoms, it makes people really invest and care about these characters when you have moments like that.
And the reason we have moments like that is you realize that this is season 13 of Night Court, and John relates to Melissa as an actress, as the daughter of Harry Anderson, and I think that's part of the special charm that the show has, is because it has that show, the previous seasons to fall back on.
Absolutely. No, and when I was first there, I asked, because there have been so many old characters they brought back from the original show as guests, and I asked John one of the first days I worked there, I said, so this is the same set, right? I mean, it's exactly the same set and the same desk and the same paintings and all this stuff. And I said, do you feel ghosts? Is it all haunted for you? And he said, yeah, I do feel them. I mean, there's just so many memories on that set for him, and that most of those actors he worked with are all gone now.
Yes, he got the word that Charlie Robinson had passed away when we were shooting the pilot, and he looked at his iPhone and he got the word, and he was just crushed. But
as George Siegel used to say, they're calling our class.
Yep.
Yeah, they're calling our class.
Yep. George Siegel, you worked with. Why don't we say, who in Hollywood haven't you worked with?
Oh, there are a few. But George was one of the best. Just adored him. In fact, there's a new documentary we just got word of that where the cast is all going to in a couple of weeks, called Siegel, which they've been working on for a couple of years. It's about to be released.
Wow. I loved him ever since King Rat. I thought he was great in King Rat. I loved that movie. I loved the book. Just a terrific book.
No, he could do it all. He could do physical comedy. He did great serious drama. But he just had a giggle in his heart, and he was so much fun to be around.
Yeah. So back to Night Court. You're an attorney. just
She's just
surprise. In the first two seasons, you were a felon, but as the recent election proved, a felon can do anything he wants this day and get away with it. So how do we explain the fact that you came out of prison and became an attorney?
That's not my problem. That's the
I love the PR. I just want to see maybe a sophisticated woman who can make a shank out of a spoon. That's what I want to know.
Well, I had confessed to John, or he knew, I guess he's the one who put me in jail many years ago, that I have been diagnosed as being criminally insane. So when they said, well, you're coming back as the prosecutor, and I said, what? How? They said, well, apparently you were a lawyer before you went to jail. Or maybe you got your degree when you were in jail. But wow. I'm very smart. And if I'm on my meds, then I can function.
Really?
Yeah. And and Wendie was not available for part of the first 3 episodes. So Gary Anthony Williams filled in as the attorney because he was a judge that we found to be very, very funny. So we made him a semi-regular. So he was the prosecuting attorney while you filled in. And then when you come back, we just kept Gary around because we liked him, and he's funny. And
Gary, every single episode, he really needs to be part of this cast.
Yes, that's for sure. And then in a future episode, Nyambi is going to become an attorney. So we're going to have 3 attorneys, 4 attorneys, 5 attorneys. We're going to have a lot of attorneys floating around. I guess in the future, Lakrita will become an attorney too, and we'll be doing night court to judges, whatever. But we've got a great cast. And why don't you tell us a little about the supporting cast besides John and Wendie and Melissa?
Are you asking me to tell you?
Yes.
I mean, well, the weird thing is when you join a cast that's been together for a couple of years, it's like catching a train that's already like left the station. Out there and realize these guys really have got it down. I mean, they work so beautifully together. It's such a great ensemble, and what I love, and I think the secret of any good comedy is when you bring together very unique, different characters, but you believe that they all belong in the same universe. And this universe of Night Court is very zany and quite out there, and there's a farcical element to it, but it has to be. I think for it to really work, you have to be invested in each of these characters and to understand what the relationships are among all of them. So that's something this season that I'm just, sort of figuring out, okay, who am I? What makes me tick? They've very generously given me some backstory, so you get a little sense of where I come from and why I'm the way I am. But I just so admire them. Nyambi he is such an elegant, lovely actor and can do comedy, but I can see why he's been so successful at doing serious drama as well. He's really gifted and elegant and generous and dear. And Lakrita there's nobody like her. She's like a force of nature. She's got a killer voice. She's got the best giggle, and she always has a little like sparkle in her eye. There's like something mischievous going on behind that face. And Gary is a revelation to me. I didn't know his work. I hadn't seen him before. I thought, who is this guy? God, he's brilliant. He comes in and just hits a home run every time.
Well, the first time I saw Gary, he was in, I believe it was Boston Legal, and he was 100 pounds heavier.
Yeah, he told me he's now a vegan and he's lost a ton of weight.
He lost 100 pounds. And he was a previous guest on our podcast, and he is magnificent. He is just the funniest guy, and he's so versatile, and he does voices.
So warm. He's just so warm. Yeah, he's like sunshine. He brings sunshine into the room whenever he shows up.
And why don't you tell us a little about your previous cast on Hot L Cleveland?
No, I'm actually thinking of Hotel Baltimore.
Hot in Cleveland. Hot out.
No, you've been around for a long time.
I've been around too long. I've lost some memory shells along the way.
Oh, good. It was. We all wondered, is anybody gonna even tune in? And what is TV Land? I didn't even know that was a station, a channel. But when they came to us and said, no, this is 4 women who end up, after a plane crash, they end up living in this house together and find out they're hot because in LA they were all past their prime. And it sort of was one of those weird things that must have been the right time and the right place, and it was like lightning in a bottle. And working with Betty and Jane and Valerie, but particularly Betty, because at that time in my life I was turning 60 and Betty was turning 90, and I thought I could not have been in a better situation at that point in my life, because I looked at her and thought, oh my gosh, I could have a whole third act.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
End of it was almost like a new beginning and seeing it from a different perspective. And she was an inspiration to so many people, but I just feel we all felt so blessed to be part of her last chapter.
My mom was a huge fan. God bless the mercy of my mother. She was a huge fan of Betty White. And I remember as a child, 5, 6 years old, I think her series was on from 1953 to 1955, Life with Elizabeth. And I remember it really well because my mother was such a big fan. And I remember that the end of the show, it always ended with her shaking her head like and saying, Elizabeth, aren't you ashamed? And she'd go, they look both ways and give it a quick, no, I'm not ashamed. And to think how long she was in show business and working with her must have been like, and she was very, I imagine her, of course, I didn't meet her or anything, but she seemed like she was a very, real lighthearted, just happy all the time. Was that what way she was?
She had this very positive energy. And when people would come up to her and say, you know what I hate? She'd say, no, and I don't really care. No, she would always find that her cup was always half full. Always. Or her vodka martini glass was always half full.
Yeah, I worked with her on Suddenly Susan, and I just found her delightful. She was a real dame, She was a dame / broad in the most delightful sense.
But she never went for anything gross or too She loved double entendres. That was her thing. But she didn't like to ever make fun of gay people or, do anything that was remotely racist or in any way that would be offensive. But she loved the sort of sexual double entendres. And she was a big flirt.
She was a big flirt.
She was Dorothy Parker type funny. She'd come in with the,
Oh, Dorothy was a little darker.
By the way, that could be a good role for Wendie Malick, Dorothy Parker.
Parker? Oh, yeah. She died at 24 or something. But she drank so much that I'm sure she looked more my age than her.
I remember one of her lines when she said she heard her thighs sliding up and down her barrister.
And what about the rest of the cast?
Who's left? I talked about everybody, didn't I?
No, rest of...
Oh, you're talking about Hot in Cleveland.
Yeah, Hot in Cleveland.
Yeah. No, Jane was lovely, and it was fun because before we got together, I had done the last season of Frasier and played John Mahoney's love interest, and we ended up getting married. So Jane, I said, "Oh my gosh, you used to be my stepdaughter, and now we're roommates." But she's a great broad too, and Valerie is Valerie. She's been on television since she was 3 or something.
Yeah.
We all realized we were given a real gift in that one, and we'd all been on series before that had been long running, and thought, well, that was our gift. So the fact that you ever get even one that sort of stands, and you get to do over 100 episodes, and then to have had multiple ones we all realized how fortunate we were. Well, it's crazy. It's kind of embarrassing sometimes. You
almost had a chance to do another long-running series as you auditioned for Diane Chambers in Cheers?
Everybody brings that up. It's like who didn't audition for Diane Chambers? Probably every actress my age.
Young Sheldon, tell me something about that role. Were you President Hagemeyer? Was that what was your? Let me ask you, what was your favorite?
Wendie,
sitcom?
I just got to say, I don't know. There's something about you. These guys are speechless today. I've never seen them like this. This is so crazy. Get it out.
I mean,
Get it out.
there's so much. There's so much stuff. There's
Yeah, but
there's so much stuff.
you guys are just struck today.
Yeah, I have that effect on people. No,
Seriously.
Thank God.
very approachable and very kind and generous. So Young Sheldon, I'd worked for Chuck Lorre on got a bunch of shows over times, and that role was actually, it was quite interesting and very different. I don't think I got out from behind my desk more than 3 times in all of the episodes I did, but I would literally go in there usually for a morning for maybe 2 or 3 hours, and that would be it. I'd just yell at the kid or yell at Ed Begley or Wally Shawn, and it was so much fun. Ed is a dear old friend, and I love Wally Shawn. I had never worked with him before, and he is so. Those two together were brilliant. They had so many great guests on that show. But it was, and I got to be just smart in that one. Which you don't always get to do.
Yeah, other than a 5-time divorced woman on Hot in Cleveland. That was your character, right?
Yeah, I was a soap opera actress
who was passed over.
I came up with that name. I said, okay, I want her to be called Victoria Chase, and her soap opera character was Honor St. Raven. I came up with that. That name I thought was so brilliant. Yeah.
Oh,
so
second snort. Second snort.
Good stuff.
My mother used to snort, and I adored my mother, so I mirrored her a lot as a kid. So that just is now a part of me. I've stolen shamelessly from her in a lot of the characters I play.
Oh.
You got to be able to laugh your way you laugh. I mean, that's the last thing in the world you want to do is like, I got a ridiculous laugh. I got this call, but I mean, if you got to cover up your laughs, you might as well just call it a day.
Right.
I mean,
right. Do you have you're doing a reboot now of Night Court. Do you have a favorite show in the past that you wish would come back for 1 or 2 or 3 episodes, all things considered? Or a favorite role that you played?
Well, I mean, in a way, I think because it just was the beginning for me, and it just gave me such a great career. One of my favorites was Dream On, and because that, I just loved Judith Tupper Stone. She was so much fun to play. And I loved being Nina Van Horn, and I love all these characters, but I think for reboots, it's a really tricky thing because oftentimes when a series ends, if it ends on its own terms, you feel like you've told the story you need to tell.
Correct.
And we actually thought about that because I'm still very close to the actors and Pam Fryman, our director from Just Shoot Me, and we have a really tight bond. And we've often talked about what if they ever asked us to do this. But after George died, I think we all realized that it just wouldn't be the same, and we'd rather remember it when it was whole and it was wonderful. And actually, they asked me to come back and do and work on the reboot of Frasier, and I sort of felt similarly that without John Mahoney there, it didn't have as much appeal for me.
Right.
Wow. Lost your character like that, huh? I read a review about you replacing India DeBuford, and they said that Malick and Larroquette are 2 comedy giants, so pitting them against each other will be high energy. And that's what this premise of you being like an ex-con coming back to haunt him again and now being a prosecutor. That's I guess what Larroquette said, anything can happen in a courtroom. That is like anything can happen when your ex comes back and ends up as a prosecutor and she's an ex-con. So the whole premise is kind of absurd, you know.
Well,
Every time we sort of question, wait a minute, this doesn't make any sense. This doesn't seem logical. Then somebody will say, yeah, but it's night court. Oh, yeah, right.
there is no logic to night court at all, because it takes place. It's called night court. It takes place between 9 p.m. and 6 a.m. Yet invariably they're out at bars in the middle of the shows. They go back to the cafeteria. People are working when they wouldn't be working, but
anything can happen. It's like an emergency room. Anything can happen. Anybody can walk through the doors. Right?
Logic is the enemy of comedy, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
So how did you?
It's perfection.
Yes.
The showrunners. It's a little bumpy, but it's good.
Yeah, it's good. You signed the same petition that a few of us are on, for sure.
How did you get started in the business? What made you want to be an actor to begin with? What was it, the motivation, or why, or was it circumstances?
And what was your big break?
Well, I think it started when my family was in New York for a vacation, and we went to see The Unsinkable Molly Brown. I think it was 10. And my sister and brother fell asleep in the first act, and so Daddy took them back to the hotel. My mother and I stayed, and I was absolutely just riveted. And we went out for cheesecake. What was that famous cheesecake place?
Lindy's.
So we went to cheesecake because Mom had been a model in New York before she got married and settled down with my dad. And I just was in love with New York and the whole thing. And I knew I've got to get to New York. That's where I belong. So the second I got out of college, I headed after Jack Kemp and after a ski team. Then I went to New York. And so I was working, in my early 20s doing dinner theater and off Broadway and waitressing. And someone approached me in Times Square and asked if I'd ever modeled, and I had done that in high school. So I took 5 years off to work for Wilhelmina. I got to live in Europe and travel the world, and it was great. And then when I was 30, I said, okay, it's time to go back and do this thing I plan to do for the rest of my life. But I knew early on I would act out things. I would pretend, I would use accents on family vacations and pretend I didn't know who those people were, who I was related to. I just always had a very rich fantasy life.
Nice.
You had a really interesting, I thought it was interesting, out of your roots, pretty interesting. Your grandparents, one was an Egyptian, the other was a missionary.
That's my dad.
Very interesting.
Yeah. She at 19 went to Egypt, and they fell in love and got married and came back on the last successful trip of the Lusitania.
Wow. And the Lusitania was sank, actually, about 10 miles from where I was born, Cork's, off the coast of Cork. That's where I went down, right by.
You've lost your accent.
My accent? Thank God. Finally! It's gone! I'm good! I can see! Eureka!
So, Wendie, let me ask you, you grew up in Buffalo, and I grew up in White Plains, New York, Valhalla, New York, and my best friend is now an eminent doctor in Boston named Jerry Marks. And
we've talked about this. He's a friend.
And Jerry went to Ohio Wesleyan. How did you end up in Ohio Wesleyan and become good friends with Jerry?
I think most of us ended up at Ohio Wesleyan because we couldnn't get into any of the better schools.
Oh, wait. I use that's my line for Jacksonville. Believe me, that's the reason I got into Jacksonville. Jerry was the top of the class, and you were probably in the top 5% of the class, or if not number one.
A lot of activities. I was reasonably smart and did pretty well in school, but I think we were not Ivy League material, the people who ended up in Ohio Wesleyan, but it was the best fit for me, and I still am great friends with so many people from that school. There's a group of us that have really stayed in touch. But Jerry, I'm not even sure how we met, but it was freshman year. No, it was junior year. And we decided that we needed to have a human sexuality committee. And he was pre-med. And we wanted to figure out ways to help people have reproductive care and get them to Planned Parenthood. This was the sexual revolution, and a lot of people just didn't have access to birth control, and abortion was illegal in Ohio, and my best friend got pregnant the first time she had sex, and we had to sort of we all got together and did a GoFundMe and got enough money that we could drive her to New York for her abortion. But Jerry was a big part of that, and was just a lovely, lovely guy. And I was so happy to hear that you were chums with him. That was so great.
And I'm so glad that you guys have reestablished acquaintances.
Yeah. No, he was a good one.
So, and he is still a good one. What was your big break in show business?
It was Dream On. That was it. I mean, I had done a series before then.
But you were 40 when you got Dream On. How did you keep working between 30 and 40?
Well, my first job on television was I'd done theater and stuff, but my first job on TV was on the old soap opera Love of Life. Yeah. I think it was the oldest one, and it was on right before the 12 o'clock news. So it was only 15 minutes or something because they had to break out for the news. But I was Nurse Jones, and I wore that outfit every day, and I basically just recapped what happened the day before. And it was so boring, and I thought, oh my God, I just thought there'd be more to TV than this. But then I started doing movies of the week and did a lot of guest roles, and that was when I was doing pretty serious stuff because I was tall and brunette, and I think they figured I'd be good either as the murderer or the ex-wife, or sometimes the lawyer or the doctor.
But didn't you think you could do that, make a career of that?
Yeah, I figured I probably could, and it was going okay. And with Dream On, I started out as the straight man for Brian Benben, and as they got to know me, they realized that I was pretty nutty, and my character became more and more neurotic, which was when it really got.
So keep going.
Yeah, that just kind of built, and thankfully, because that show was on HBO and very few homes had HBO at the time, it was like you'd see it when you were in a hotel, but people in the industry watched it and paid attention, and particularly when they made that hour of Dream On and the Larry Sanders Show, which was called The Best Hour of Television, it just garnered a lot of attention, and it opened a lot of doors for me.
Yeah, I think you were partially responsible for the success of HBO because that was one of the first series.
Oh, I am so responsible for this. Without me, they'd have been nothing.
Without your show, it would have been a lot harder.
Absolutely. And there were so many knockoffs of Dream On in certain ways. Ally McBeal, there were other shows that used those old clips, but I don't think anybody's ever done it as well as Dream On. And that was Marta Kaufman and David Crane.
And you worked opposite Shirley Jones, whose son was on our show. And I've worked with Shirley a couple of times. She is one of the bodiest bronze I know. Well, speaking of body, you also worked with Cloris Leachman in the same movie. What was that experience like?
Cloris was unique. She was such a naughty, naughty woman. She loved to play jokes on people, and if you were ever backstage with her and about to make your entrance, she would just mess up your hair at the last minute, which made me so mad. I had to grab her and say, "You have got to stop right now." She came to rehearsal one day on Hot in Cleveland when we had the whole Mary Tyler Moore cast there, and she showed up for rehearsal in her pajamas and a robe and slippers and asked for a toothbrush. She had escaped from supervision. Oh, she was crazy. But she also was a magnificent actress and a concert pianist, and a lot more to her than people may have realized.
Wow.
Concert pianist. I never knew that about her. Terrific actress. I had no idea.
We worked with Cloris toward the end of her life. And in Girl Meets World, and she was magnificent up until the end. I mean, she was funny and bawdy, and the same gal. she delivered on the good. Everything you expected from watching Cloris Leachman in the movies, you got in person. She was just a fabulous person. Fabulous person.
Well, besides being responsible for the success of HBO,
and now NBC.
And now NBC.
And you, Disney too. I mean, you do a lot of voiceovers for Disney, so you're responsible for their success as well. Like,
I'm just trying to bring our industry back. Well, the pandemic and then the strike, we got hit pretty hard, especially in LA. And we got to keep. You want to, when you're on a lot, you want to feel like it's just this like Santa's workshop where all the stages are full and you run into all your friends at the commissary, and it's been pretty quiet. I mean, thank goodness for Night Court and Shrinking, and the shows that I know are still there, and hopefully they're going to come back with some more incentive from our governor. But you hate to see this industry just being jettisoned to other states and countries, because this is like kind of the backbone of our economy down here.
Yeah, I've been walking on stages since 1984, and I still get excited every time I walk on a lot. Every time I drive on a lot, I get excited every time I see the water tower.
Have you been here the whole time, your whole career?
No, I left for 8 years to go to the Disney Channel, and I did Shake It Up with Zendaya, and I did Girl Meets World. Girl Meets World with now Sabrina Carpenter and Danielle Fishel, and it was a great experience as well. I've always been in my life. I've always been timely with my career, and then I came back to Warner Brothers to do Murphy Brown in New York.
Got it.
Well, Frank, I don't know, brother. You get excited every time you walk on the lot.
I do.
It still happens. Huh?
It still happens.
And when you're wheeling you on the lot, you'll be the same way. You're going to be just excited.
And I don't know if Wendie's going to be any different, but I guess show business. You don't retire from show business. Show business retires from you. Wendie and I have both been able to avoid that fate, and I believe we'll be able to avoid that fate until it's our choice not to be on
the roar of the grease paint, the smell of the crowd, huh?
Yep.
Until we exit stage left. I'm always kind of amazed by how many of my peers have now retired and are traveling if they've been successful in playing golf or whatever it is they do. But when people ask me, I'd say, why would I? As long as I'm invited to the dance.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I love sets. I love that family that you create when you're working with people, every week, and you get to know each other and their families, and you just build this trust and this relationship that it's pretty special, and just to get to be together and laugh every day is the greatest antidote to despair.
Yep.
Saying.
After the show, athletes say they miss the locker room after they retire. Well, in our 70s, we still get to go to the locker room. And last night, after the song and dance we did, Wendie was standing there when they were playing back the song, Wendie was standing there doing a little dance. It was just such a joyous moment for both of us just to be at our ages. I'm much older than Wendie.
Not much.
Not much.
I just look younger than you.
Thankfully. But it was such a joyous, just, the 5 or 10 seconds that the cast was singing and dancing. I mean, I can't replace that.
Yeah, it's like your extended family, right? I mean, every series that you guys got, it seems to me like every time we interview somebody who's a long series, it's extended family. You want to see your family happy. So, I mean, makes perfect sense.
I happened to have lunch with Joel Zwick, who is a famous director. I don't know whether you worked with Joel at all in your career, but he was doing Family Matters, and he did hundreds and hundreds of shows, and he's now 82 years old. And I said, Joel, you've lost some weight. He said, well, I'm retired now, so I walk 10 miles a day just to find something to do to help him get through the days. Wow. I hope I have the energy to walk 10 miles a day when I'm Joel's age.
But, you're not going anywhere, Frank.
Well, I hope not, and I hope neither are you, and I hope we're going there together. Wendie, thank you so much for being a guest.
You're
Derek, do you have any last questions for Wendie?
I do.
Well,
Wendie, what's your favorite food?
favorite food. It's probably going to be so boring to you, but
No.
probably this chopped kale salad that I have.
Really?
Yeah, it's kale and chopped red cabbage.
Okay.
And I do it with roasted pumpkin seeds and pistachio nuts.
Whoa.
And there's a little avocado in there, chopped up mint. And it's just one of the yummiest things. I eat it like 3 times a week.
When's the last time?
Guess what we're having again tonight? I make
When's the last time?
I'll do that with with a piece of grilled fish. That's kind of my go-to.
When's the last time you ate meat? When did you become a pescatarian? You're a pescatarian, correct?
Yeah, which is getting trickier too.
Figuring out which fish.
Yeah, figure out what's sustainable, how much mercury there is.
Yeah,
I'm trying to eat more and more veggie stuff. But
that was going to be my next question. Was were you vegetarian? What if so? You have longevity in the industry. What is your, if for the average person that doesn't get to know who you really are, what's sort of your daily routine
and fitness routine as well?
Yeah.
I get up every morning, and before I go to work, even when I have an early call, I walk my dog.
Okay.
Go down horses. We have horses and a miniature donkey. Check in.
I've got Billy, so I'm.
He walks his Billy.
He's my miniature donkey.
And when I'm not working, or when I come home from rehearsal, we have a gym that my husband built here. We live on a ranch up in the Santa Monica Mountains, and so he, during COVID, took one of the stalls and turned it into a gym. We put a sauna next to it, which is great.
Sweet.
So we have our gym here. So when I come home, I try to do at least a half hour of, so I hike every day, do some sort of Pilates and light weights and stuff like that.
Okay.
And I ride when I have the time, and I like to play tennis.
So you're extremely active.
She's extremely active and extremely fit. When Ann Lopez, who's the ex-wife of George Lopez, was at the show last night, she said she's unbelievably fit. Who trains that woman? She's got Michelle Obama arms.
Wow.
Yeah, she's.
My daddy. He was in amazing shape. I got good genes. I lucked out within the genes department.
And then another question is, what do you think? I know you have talent. Do you feel like you had what do you think that you have that's different from other actresses that sort of started with you and didn't make it as far as you have?
Well, that's a really good question. I have to say, luck and timing.
There it is. We've asked that question, a similar question, to so many people, and I've said that anybody who doesn't attribute part of their success to luck is a liar.
Yeah, because there are so many. I know so many incredibly talented people that just can't get arrested, and particularly now, and particularly women of my age. But I think it's that, and I also have a feeling that maybe part of my good fortune came from the fact that I didn't really have any success until I was a grown-up.
Right.
I mean, I really was not a household name or really, recognizable until I was 40. So I had incredible gratitude for it, and I do for every job I have. And I got great advice early on saying, whenever you have the opportunity to do the thing you love, leave it on the mat. Don't ever phone it in.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Every time, just do the absolutely best that you got. And sometimes it's not as good as other times, but you just want to feel like you didn't hold back and you didn't phone it in.
Yep.
It's what you said before about how many incredibly talented people are out there and they can't get arrested. It's amazing. I mean, I could think of just going to lounge acts in Vegas and say, how could this guy not be famous? The greatest guitar player. It's amazing, But you say particularly now. Why is that? Why is it harder now than it was when
Well, I think, now I don't even know how to advise young actors anymore when they ask me for advice on how to begin because it's a different world. And when I was coming up in New York, we did showcases and agents came to see you. Now it's more about, do you have followers? Are you somebody who can promote yourself? And that doesn't always align with how talented you are.
Right.
How crafty you are. And, you might be a great influencer, but not be a great actor.
Right.
So it's a different time.
Got it.
It's the same thing as stand-up comedy. A lot of comics now are, packing clubs because they're socially active, and like you said, it's like being president. It's one thing to get elected president, but another thing to do the job. And it's two different talents. Same thing.
Well, unfortunately, we're getting into politics.
I don't want to go back into that dark hole, but it's
we can.
I'm just going to hang out here for a while,
No, let us hope that the union will survive.
Yes, the union will survive, and so will Night Court. And so will Shrinking, and so will Chicken Sisters, and so will everything else. Wendie, thanks so much for being a part of the show. You've been a delight, as I knew you would be.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye, Wendie. Thank you. Great meeting you.
It was awesome.
She was terrific.
Yep.
You guys are so struck. God. Oh my God.
Struck.
Billy, what's happening?
Strike.
Do you know what struck means?
Yeah.
Starstruck.
Starstruck, yeah.
Were you starstruck?
No, I don't think
Lies.
so. I don't think so.
Well,
I see Frank every day. He's a big shot. Frank.
we beat it up pretty good today.
Yeah, it was good. It was good, actually.
Let's say goodbye for another week.
Let's thank our guests, thank our viewers, hopefully.
And thank Wendie Malick
Yes.
for being a terrific guest.
Thanks, Wendie.
And have a nice week.
Have a nice week as well.
We'll see you next week.